Hey everybody. I wanted to talk to you today about the fourth sage. I was planning on this little YouTube video with an introduction about the book for a while, and I thought, today's as good a day as any. So the fourth sage is pretty much done. Editing, just have to put in the corrections and then bring it back to the editor and then format it and publish it in the next couple of weeks. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up. It all began, no, but it all began, the fourth sage was first born the moment I finished The Three Feathers. The Three Feathers was finished in, I think, April of 2012. And it was a complete novel, it was done, there wasn't any sequel that I planned on or anything, any continuation of the story that was immediate. But there was this line in my head, even when I said the end. And when I finished, closed the computer, I let a couple of days go by, and then I said, you know what, I just have to write that line down because it's bothering me. And the line was, I'll read it to you. The line was, Aries closes the book, holds it in her hands for a while longer. And I sat down and wrote about 4 pages what that is a longer version of what is now chapter 0 in the fourth stage. And it's basically this girl that lives in a futuristic high-tech world that is reading the Three Feathers, even though books are banned and she's not allowed to. She's reading the book in secret. And I was like, oh my God, this would be an amazing ending to the Three Feathers. So the Three Feathers is not really a story, it's basically a real story, but within another story. And I thought that was a really cool way to end the Three Feathers. So I gave it to a beta reader, a couple of them, and they all said, you know, it's nice and it's really cool, but it brings you out of the emotional impact that the Three Feathers has in the end. It kind of takes that away from you. And steers you in a completely different direction, which is cool, but it kind of takes away from the experience of the Three Feathers. So I decided to not put it in there. That was beginning of 2012. Then there was editing and publishing of the Three Feathers throughout the year into September, October. Then I began writing the Dawning of the True Self, which is a spiritual companion to the Three Feathers, which basically tells the story of if we are on a spiritual path, it compares that spiritual path that we're on, if we are, with the story in the Three Feathers. So wrote that and published that up. That was then, I think, March of 2013. That was all done. And then in April, there was Camp NaNoWriMo. NaNoWriMo is the National Novel Writing Month. And usually in November, there's a website you can go onto and you can sign up. And basically you have 30 days to write 50,000 words. And in the end, if you cross the finish line, you get a little sticker. And so it's a really cool thing. A lot of writers do it. But there's also one in April. It's called Camp NaNoWriMo. Basically the same thing. So I signed up and I thought, all right, I can work a little bit on the fourth sage. I had written chapter 0, chapter 1, and a little bit, tiny little bit of chapter 2, not that much. I was probably about 25, maybe 30 pages into it, nothing. But I didn't get to the 50,000 words, but I wrote 35,000 words at Camp NaNoWriMo. That was then the end of April. And throughout the year, including the actual NaNoWriMo in November, up until I think the end of December was when, beginning of January this year, 2014, was when it was finished, pretty much. Now, the writing of the fourth sage was at times excruciating. I was riddled with doubt, and there wasn't a day I was writing. Sometimes I was okay with what I wrote, but most of the time I thought, really, where is this going? I have no clue. What's happening next, and does it even make sense? So the whole story was, or the whole writing process for me was not an easy one, which is really cool now to think back at after all the beta readers have given me their reviews, which I feel truly honored to have received them, because it's basically the opposite of what I thought. They really loved it, and I really never thought it would go anywhere. So anyway, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the book itself, about the content. The society or the world the fourth sage is set in is, in my opinion, basically our world pushed forward 100 years without interference. That means if we wouldn't interfere, the world that we live in right now could possibly end up that way. For example, the world of the fourth sage is completely controlled by corporations. There's no government. There are no schools. There's only the corporate education system, which has an education, but it is completely geared towards the goals of the corporation. And you can imagine what that would, you can maybe imagine what that could mean for the people that live there. Books are banned. Any artistic streak anybody has is immediately corrected. There is no privacy. There is a 24-hour, 7 days a week surveillance system that is installed every hallway, every room. There's cameras everywhere that record everybody's life. And the artificial intelligence mainframe is built so that for example, any artistic streak somebody has immediately countermeasures applied. So people are being kept in check with that system. What helps that is that there is no outside. Basically, the city that our main character, or the world of the fourth sage is set in, is a city that has 5 super high rises. Each of them has 65,000 people in it. They're over 3,000 feet high, 282 stories, and there are 5 of them. The city is abandoned, has been abandoned for 80 years. We find out later in the book why, but for now, it's, I think, basically just good to know that it's completely abandoned and you supposedly can't live there. So you have a high-rise that is 65,000 people and very high and an enclosed system. The high-rise itself is divided into tiers. There's tier number 6, which is the outer ring of the building from the top to the bottom. That houses the super rich, the corporate headquarters, the board members, and the people that have tons and tons of money live there because there's sunlight, and they have the whole outer ring from top to bottom. Then you have tier 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and the inner core. And the inner core is an open space that is about 150 feet in diameter, circular. There's nothing. It goes from the top to the bottom. Nobody knows why it's there. And surrounding that open space is tier 0, which is the mechanicals of the building. You have the heating, the cooling, the food processor, water treatment. There's a prison below, and it's all platforms and ladders and transformers and big units. It's a labyrinth of mechanical utilities. And there's a railing in the center, and you can just look down 200 floors wherever you are, and it disappears into the darkness, but the center is open. Tier 0 is mechanical, and tier 1 is basically where the mentally unstable are housed, the sick, the poor, the low-class workers, and the orphans. So that's how the society is set up, and that's basically also how the building is set up. Tier 1 or tier 0 has absolutely nothing to do with tier 6. Aries, again, our hero, our heroine, is 15 years old. Her parents died when she was 12. And then she moved from tier 4, where they lived, into tier number 1. She's in the orphanage, but her dad had some money that she inherited, so she actually has her own room, compared to all the other kids, or most of the other kids, who are in 12 people bunk beds. So she's a little bit of an outsider that way already. Aries, when she came into tier 1, she did 2 things. Number 1 is she hacked into the artificial intelligence mainframe computer. She's very smart. And she created a loop for herself. That means 1 hour a day between 1:38 and 2:38 at night, she roams the building via the air ducts. So she basically there's an air duct in her room behind her futon. She pushes it away, she goes in, and for 1 hour a night she's free, quote unquote. And she knows that section of a building really well, and she goes up into the air ducts and back, and there are smaller ones and bigger ones, and she's very, very familiar with this. She's very, very good at it. She can climb up and down, and that's basically her 1 hour of freedom that she has, that nobody knows where she is, and she feels like this is her hour for herself. Now, in one of those excursions at night, she finds something in the air ducts that can potentially, or has the power to, change her fate and the fate of everyone in this society completely and utterly. In order to follow what this is that she found, she has to become an outlaw. So now she's being hunted by the corporation. She slips through the artificial intelligence mainframes with all the cameras and surveillance everywhere, and her adventure begins. I don't want to go any further here because I wanted to just give you a little bit of an introduction. I don't want to spoil anything for you. But it's a very exciting story that basically, the theme of it, I was thinking about it a lot, and I think the theme is that you have the artificial intelligence mainframe computer on one hand that has completely figured out the human behavior, and has controlled it and has it in check. But Aries is in a position where she has to completely negate what she has learned all her life and use her instincts. Her instinct is the only thing that she can bring against the massive apparatus that is the corporation. Because her instinct is totally, completely unpredictable. And the unpredictability of her 15-year-old mind, together with whoever she meets there on her journey, and basically build the opposing force to the corporation and to the artificial intelligence mainframe. So it's basically the computer, highly intelligent computer system versus a children's or a teenager's instinct. And that is the force that is the battle that is being played out in that book. So I think I told you enough. We're 14 minutes into it. I don't want to make it too long, but I wanted to just show you one more thing that, actually I'm going to read you chapter 1, but I wanted to show you this map that Lawrence Mann drew that I thought is just really amazing. So you have the tower room, you have the tower on top, there is a sky bridge, there's another building in the back, and then you have this whole underground system. And that is something in the story that takes you completely to a completely different world that is the opposite of this high-tech surveillance system, because the whole world Aries lives in has been built, unbeknownst to many, many people, has been built on the ruins of an ancient world that sits 5,000 feet below the high-rise. So there's a whole new level that is being introduced in the last, I don't know, second half of the book. So it's really cool, I think. Anyway, I'm going to read you chapter 1. If you don't want to read, or if you don't want to listen to it, just turn off the YouTube channel anytime you want. I'm going to read it. It's 4 pages, 3 pages in the book. Chapter 0, 90 seconds. Actually, let me just track back for 1 second. There's something before that. There is a poem that begins the book, and that is called From Now On. Like the wind over forgotten plains, when the storm clouds whisper names, like the girl that came from light, like the bird that was born at night, that your promise is our fate, that your fight was our gate. Freedom's voices never cease. Your sacrifice became our peace. Like the wind o'er forgotten plains, and the breaking of our chains, at the ending of their reigns, from now on, just your memory remains. Kira Understad. Chapter 0, 90 seconds. Aries closes the book, holds it in her hands for a while longer. Her fingers trace the slight indentation of the almost indecipherable title. The stamped feathers in the center have lost their coloring decades ago, long before she was born, even before the ban. She must have read the book close to a dozen times, taking refuge in its pages, escaping into its world of adventure, wonder, and warm friendships. She has not yet seriously considered the repercussions, should she be caught with it. The LOC, the law of the corporation, demands house arrest and additional work hours for first-time offenders. But she isn't a first-time offender. She isn't even a second-time offender. For her, it would be the third time. She would be in prison for up to a month. Her wristwatch begins to flash and vibrate. 90 seconds. A touch on the screen of the watch changes the walls of her room from an image of a forest to a regular room with a large window showing the skyline of a city in the distance. 83 seconds. In truth, there are no windows in her room. In one of the corners next to her futon, she crouches on the ground and takes out a thin wall plate that covers a rectangular opening. She crawls inside. She had wondered in the past, like she does now, how long she would still fit in there. She's slim for a 15-year-old, but knows that one day the ducts will not allow her to roam the building any longer. 60 seconds. The high-resolution display of her watch begins to pulsate in 1-second increments. About 8 feet into the air duct, she turns on her back, looking up. The secondary channel, perpendicular to this one, disappears into its self-reflecting mirror image far up into the building. 36 seconds. Aries pries open the panel in front of her. Behind it sits the Raytheon, a conductor generating the power to periodically sterilize the air duct system. As a side effect, the high-density ray kills any other life form that are present in the ducts. It's been rumored that the primary function of the sterilizers is to prevent the inhabitants of the building from escaping to the outside world. 28 seconds. She pushes the book behind the conductor and closes the panel. After she had moved into Tier 1, the area closest to the inner core of her building, she had accomplished 2 things. First, she hacked into the mainframe computer of her complex, and from the room cameras that record everyone's life 24/7, she had found a way to create a loop each day for exactly 1 hour. For 60 minutes per day, she doesn't have to be in her room during free time. She can roam the building via the air ducts. Secondly, she figured out how to calculate the intervals between the duct cleanings, and so far has managed to always be a few minutes ahead of them. Of course, there's no guarantee. Her calculations are 99.7% accurate. The other 0.3% is a risk she's willing to take. By her estimate, there are 6 hours and 32 minutes before the next cleaning, but the video loop will only hold for 18 more seconds. She turns on her stomach, slides backwards while pushing off with her hands. The green screen of her watch pulsates in the semi-darkness of the duct. Her feet reach the opening. 7 seconds. Her knees come out. She lifts up her stomach to avoid getting caught on her belt lock. 3 seconds and her head is out. She closes the panel, slumps down onto her futon and grabs her pad. 0 seconds. Her wristwatch goes dark and she's live. There's still homework to do. The moral code is one of the subjects. She calls it the immoral code, as it follows from the basic premise that there can't be privacy for security purposes, and there can't be choice when it comes to education, food, clothing, and social contacts. Her mother had always told her to be strong and to think for herself. Nobody can take your thoughts away from you, she used to say. They are yours and yours alone. But there was a strange sadness in her eyes, as if she hadn't fully believed it, or as if what she said was a mere hope she held, and nothing more. Lately, those words have taken on a meaning they didn't have when she first heard them. Strength and pride have always been the two pillars of the CES, the corporate education system. Weakness is not tolerated in kids, and even though Aries can only guess why this is so, she has decided to give them what they want. She never, ever shows them her weakness. For 23 hours a day, she is strong for them. But for 1 hour a day, she allows herself to feel. And sometimes, mostly after reading, she cries. She cries for her mother and her father, and she cries for her freedom, and she cries for all the other children with her who are wards of the state and who landed on the outskirts of a society that had gone too far in the wrong direction. How can the human spirit be captured? How can it be diminished almost to extinction? How can it be made so small and almost insignificant that the thought of fighting for it is nothing but an idea and easily dismissed as foolish? She's asked herself these questions many times over. She knows the answer. She knows that whoever, whatever stands behind the corporation has perfected it and has made it their goal, pursuing it with any means necessary. To break the human spirit, to hold it prisoner, and eventually to extinguish it completely. And suddenly she knows she needs to do something about it. Thanks for listening. The book is coming out hopefully the first week of June. You can get it on Amazon and for all the e-readers, for the Nook and Kobo and iPad and all that. Check out my website, www.stefanbolz.com or the3feathers.com. Subscribe for my newsletter and subscribe for the video channel if you wanted to be informed about any other videos. For now, goodbye. Thanks.